E.T. Phone Home.
Hey everybody, welcome to Real Ripe and Real Rotten. It's a podcast where we're taking a look at the highs and lows of your favorite Hollywood artists. Each month we're going to be using Rotten Tomatoes to determine the best and worst film in one individual's filmography. You can listen along, let us know your thoughts, and all that jazz. We've been talking about Steven Spielberg. We talked about Hook last week or 2 weeks ago, which was at 29%. We're up to E.T., which I believe is 98%. A very highly rated, highly regarded movie. My name is Wes Teasdale. I'm here with Clay McCormick. Clay, how are you? Let's talk about E.T.
I'm good.
You've been champing at the bit, I guess is the expression, to talk about E.T. And you.
I was just gonna say, much like Hook last week, the musical connection this week is that apparently the Neil Diamond song "Turn On Your Heart Light" is based on this movie. He did not write it for the movie. He just saw the movie, really enjoyed the movie, and decided to write a song about it.
This has been the highest rated, the real ripe version of of a person. This has been the one that I've gotten the most negative feedback on Twitter and Patreon about.
I am probably going to be in that camp myself. Okay. All right. I'm just going to lay out my thoughts on this movie very quickly.
Sure. Can I give? Let's give a little bit of feedback to get into that. So this came out in E.T. was directed by Steven Spielberg. Came out in 1982. Directed by Spielberg, written by Melissa Matheson. Special effects by a whole bunch of people. It stars Henry Thomas, Dee Wallace, Peter Coyote, Robert McNaughton, Drew Barrymore, and Pat Welsh. It tells the story of Elliot, a lonely boy who befriends an extraterrestrial dubbed E.T. who is stranded on Earth. Elliot and his siblings have to help E.T. return to his home planet while attempting to keep him hidden from their mother and the government. Came out in 82. It was a huge blockbuster. It surpassed Star Wars to become the highest grossing film of all time. It held that record for 11 years until what movie broke it? Do you know, Clay?
11 years, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, yeah. It's the highest grossing film of the 1980s. In 1994, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It was nominated for a bunch of awards. It was nominated for 9 Oscars, including Best Picture. Do you know what movie beat E.T. for Best Picture that year?
In 1982?
Yep.
No.
It was...
No.
It was Gandhi, directed by Richard Attenborough. So
I was going to say like The Color of Money or something.
Richard Attenborough declared, "I was certain that not only would E.T. win, but that it should win. It was inventive, powerful, and wonderful. I make more mundane movies." If you guys have listened to our Second Sight podcast, we wrapped that one up by talking about the Academy Awards Best Picture and like how we each of us determine whether or not something would be a Best Picture. I can say no matter what, like I guess that would sum up my taste on the Best Picture. No matter what you think about E.T., E.T. is a better Best Picture winner than Gandhi.
I think Gandhi is more in line with what they usually do.
Sure.
Than E.T. is. I would say if you're looking at stuff outside of the movie itself, then yeah, E.T. makes more sense. But if you're just looking at the two movies side by side, 100% they would go with Gandhi over E.T.
Yeah,
no question.
Yeah. So yeah, what you can kick us off with your sort of general breakdown of what you think about E.T. and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I have never really cared for this movie. I've seen it once before this as a kid, and as a kid I didn't like it, and I feel like if I wasn't going to like it then, I was never going to like it. So I was a little bit hesitant going into watching again, and more or less what I came away with is that this is a very well-made movie. There's a lot of really good stuff in it. I just don't like it.
Yep.
It's not for me. It's like there's a lot of great stuff in it. Like I love the way that Spielberg handles the bad guys and stuff. How he doesn't show them for a long time, and the NASA guys are like this faceless force kind of thing. That stuff was really cool.
The NASA guys are basically the aliens in an alien movie. Like the adults are treated like to be the real monsters of the movie.
Right, yeah, that stuff was really good. And, you know, there's the kids are great. Drew Barrymore's fantastic. I mean, all the kids are really good. Dee Wallace is great. It did kind of hurt my chest a little bit when I looked her up afterwards and realized she was the same age I am right now when she made that movie, and she's like this frazzled mother of 3 or 4 or whatever. It just kind of it made me take perspective of my life a little bit. But it's not. When we were talking about Hook, Wes, you were talking about how when you think about Steven Spielberg, you think about kind of like the melodramatic schmaltzy stuff. And I was kind of surprised that E.T. was his highest rated movie, because I can think of about 5 other ones off the top of my head that I would say are just straight up better movies than E.T. But when you put it next to Hook, which is his lowest rated movie, it kind of makes sense, because I think E.T. is the pinnacle of his filmmaking style, the same filmmaking style he uses in Hook, where Hook, he kind of sprays it all over the place and is very unfocused. E.T., it's like condensed it down to its purest form.
Yeah.
Like E.T. is 100% made up of the Spielberg childlike wonder schmaltz thing. And it's done with like laser focused accuracy, whereas Hook, it's just kind of like, let's see what Robin Williams can do for a while.
Yes.
And so that makes a lot more sense now, looking at these two side by side, because there are, there's some of that stuff in other movies. Like there's some of that in Jurassic Park. There's not much of that in Schindler's List, but there are other movies where he does it, bits and pieces of it. Like you still get some of the adventure stuff, that he does in Raiders of the Lost Ark and all that kind of stuff, but it's sort of like everything he's about, at least at this time when he was making movies, is just laser focused.
Yeah.
And so I get why people like it. I get why kids would like it. Even though it wasn't really for me, at the end when, I will say it doesn't make a ton of sense when he comes back from the dead, but that whole thing where E.T.'s like dying and stuff, that's like really depressing to watch him like turning like gray and shit. It's almost as bad as, do you ever see, is it Batteries Not, what's the one with Johnny Five?
That is, no, it's not
Short Circuit.
Short Circuit.
Yeah. If you ever seen Short Circuit 2, where he gets the shit beat out of him by a bunch of thugs, and like they just smash, like he's like bleeding oil on the street after these like 3 guys just beat him into a pulp.
Yeah.
You're that's gonna hurt your, like if I was a kid, I would have nightmares for a week watching that. And so I could see why, E.T. is I'm kind of going all over the place here, but
this is the Hook version of the E.T. discussion.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just to sum it up. It's just not for me. Like it's just not my kind of thing.
Do you talk? Talk? Me, human. Boy. Elliot.
I also grew up not liking the movie. And I don't know where the schism comes from, because I understand, just comparing it to Hook, this is like a much better made movie. Like there are shots that are artistic in it, like there are memorable shots, like the puppets look great, the way that it sounds, like the music is memorable here in a way that it's not memorable in Hook.
I guarantee you the budget's like a third of what Hook was too.
Yeah, I can actually look that up, but I think the budget is $10 million. Hook was $70 million. So
it's okay.
I mean, the weird thing about it is that watching it this time, I was kind of relieved to learn that it wasn't just that I was a child and I didn't understand what was happening, but the E.T. gets sick journey really doesn't come out of anywhere. Like it just kind of happens, and then it's not explained what's really happening to him,
or the fact that they're like physically connected somehow. They don't really establish. I guess that happens at the point where he brings him home and he kind of like passes out. Well, I guess.
Well, I think that it's odd, right? Because you described it as like sort of schmaltzy Spielberg stuff, and I think that it is, but I think that the movie succeeds because it doesn't really touch on things. It leaves a lot of doors, open, and you can walk through them and think about them. sort of like there's a line at the beginning where, well, even before that, the one thing I did learn from this rewatch is that I did not remember that the ETs were alien botanists, which is funny to me.
I didn't remember that you saw them at the beginning.
Oh, really? The whole bunch of them walking around? Yeah.
I assumed that you didn't see them until the end. So when the first shot is just a bunch of ETs walking around, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Just very like little chicken nugget men just hobbling back and forth looking at plants.
They do look like chicken nuggets.
Where was that tie-in?
There's a dinner scene before, at the very start of the movie, where Elliot says something about like his father is out in Vegas or something with a girlfriend.
Mexico,
yeah, with a girlfriend, and it upsets his mother. And his older brother tells him that, like, when are you going to start thinking about how other people feel? They kind of tie that in with E.T., where E.T. is forcing Elliot to be empathetic, but I didn't get the sense that Elliot was a bad kid who this was teaching a lesson to in any sense of the manner. So it doesn't stick with me as like Elliot's really growing and developing, because I feel like Elliot's pretty consistent through the whole thing. He's a pretty good kid the whole way through. Mm-hmm. And it's surprising to me how little content there is to think about this movie. And I was looking at film criticism of it, and the criticism is actually more interesting because it's doing the very English lit thing where it's finding things that I don't think are really in the movie, but it's telling me that they are and they could be if you thought about it this way. Which,
well, you know that this whole movie is just King Lear, right?
Sure, or it's an analogy of Jesus Christ returned from the cross. I don't disagree with, like, I don't think there's a problem with doing film criticism like that, but I think that this movie is distinctly not about anything, which is maybe why I have a hard time watching it at this point, because it doesn't really make me think about anything. It doesn't make me, there's nothing in it that I'm like, oh, what an interesting way to take that. It's very much a vanilla, schmaltzy, but super effective at making you emotionally distraught movie. Like Spielberg's very good at making you sad, and I think that's really the main thing with this movie, and sort of in that way.
Yeah, no, I think he's very good at setting up emotionally. I don't want to say broken, but fractured characters, where it's like they are very realistic in that they are day-to-day normal, but there is something just under the surface that is kind of an emotional trigger for them, whether it's well, in this case it's the father being gone, and which I liked that they don't really spend a lot of time on that. They just it's just sort of there, and it's clearly a open wound for everybody. And I thought they dealt with that stuff really well, because you can get too into that, it become too much of a plot point, and I think they handled it well.
Yeah, and then at that point it becomes too much about E.T. as the surrogate father. Like it limits the lane of where the movie can go, I think, on some level when you start doing that. And I think that and
I mean, you don't need it, because you don't need more than he gave you. It's like, it's a very, as you're saying, it's not really about anything really. It is pretty slimmed down as far as, like, there's not a lot of fat on it.
No.
Pretty much every scene has a purpose, and they don't really dwell on stuff in a way that makes it seem superfluous.
Yeah, I think that it's almost maybe the most maturely written script in a way, because there's nothing super obvious about it. So it's why I'm hesitant to say that it's not about anything, because it kind of is. It's about a bunch of stuff, but it's not interested in really looking at any of it particularly closely. So it's a very tight little story that is cohesive. Everything makes sense. All the scenes work together like that. But at its core, all of it is just kind of driving this very simple story. And I don't know if that's like more of a personal problem than anything. I don't think it's really a criticism of the movie. But like the one of the better criticisms that I saw was that it's the movie is a sort of criticism of the boredom of suburbia on some level, because I was struck by how bland the film looks. Everything is brown. They're in the desert, which I guess makes sense. But I feel it's not a very visually exciting movie, except for Spielberg's use of light in a lot of scenes.
Yeah,
he's very good.
The use of light is really good. Yeah,
But so I don't know if it's not hammered home intensely enough for me to think that Spielberg actually has a theme about the suburbs being like this. But I could read into that on some level. I think about the kids being bored. All these endless sort of California neighborhoods of just the same house around in a circle going around each other. And E.T. brings a little bit of spark of something into that, and it changes everything. But I don't know.
Well, that's another thing that they don't really spend any time with it. You're not really seeing much outside of Elliot's perspective. And he's not spending a lot of time outside doing stuff. It's just, I mean, even in the Halloween sequence where the whole town is out and about, you're not really seeing them do anything because he and E.T. kind of split off fairly quickly and start doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's another thing where it's like, yeah, I could see that being part of the intent if they had spent a little more time, but is the fact that they didn't spend that much time on it, opening that door, like you said, to kind of explore it on your own.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's difficult. Do you? I guess am I alone on that, or do you think that it's similarly? Do you find it problematic on the way that I do, or it makes it difficult to watch, or why, if it has any impact at all?
I don't know if I would say it makes it problematic, because a lot of that stuff does seem. Because it's not saying anything specific, a lot of that stuff seems kind of superfluous, not to use that word again, but like spending any time with that stuff would make the movie more about one of those things.
Yeah.
When it's really only about the relationship of Elliot and E.T. So as long as that's the through line, then you don't really need too much of the other stuff to make it work. So I wouldn't say it's problematic. Yeah, I didn't see that as an issue for me.
Okay. So I guess did this watch through of anything sort of spur your understanding of why you didn't particularly like it?
I don't really like the ET design.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know.
Because I find the ET to be a lot was dependent on ET, and I think they made him a good mix of being creepy but also adorable at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I think if the design of ET is wrong, I think the whole movie kind of goes down the drain. They spent almost $2 million on his costume. And I don't know. He's alien and freaky looking, but at the same time, just the way he walks, like when they're all walking around in the very opening and sort of picking flowers and stuff like that, there is a innocence to them at the same time that they are super freaky and everything like that. So what don't you like about them?
I think it's just he almost feels a little bit to me like they did spend so much time designing him that all of the designs just sort of like ended up being homogenized into like a brown blob.
Yeah.
Like when his neck goes a little bit longer, he starts to look a little bit more interesting, but just I don't know, he just seems like just sort of like a hobbling brown blob to me that didn't
yeah.
From like, well, I don't know. I guess as the kids interact with him more, he becomes more like sort of cuddly to an extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's another one of those things where I'm surprised that it became as iconic as it did, because it just sort of feels underwhelming to me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not to say that's why I don't like the movie. It's just I don't know. I think maybe it is, because I think the part that's was tough for me was finding myself empathizing about E.T. the way that everybody in the movie does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess you know what it is? Okay. I think thinking back what we were just talking about, I think because the movie is pretty much only about Elliot's relationship to E.T., that's where it loses me. I think I don't think it's bad that it is that. I just think for me, it's more interesting if there's more going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I think it's a kids movie, you know.
100%. Yes.
And I don't, but like a lot of the stuff I see, the sort of summaries are like terrific for kids, but even adults will find themselves enjoying the misadventures of E.T. And it's like I don't know if I agree with that. As an adult,
I like the scene where he got drunk. That was fun.
That ties into the death of the suburbs criticism too, which is how much sort of product placement stuff they consume in this movie.
Yeah.
Like it's very consumer heavy.
Well, they created an entirely new candy for the movie because Eminem had the foresight to not want to be involved in this biggest movie of the 1980s.
Great decision on Eminem's part. They were concerned that E.T. would scare children, so they didn't want their candy associated with it. So Reese's Pieces picked up the slack and became iconic. And Reese's Pieces are superior to M&M's anyway, so it's not a big deal.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one too.
Oh, really?
I don't really like Reese's Pieces that much.
Yeah.
I think because Reese's Peanut Butter Cup is the perfection of the peanut butter and chocolate mixture.
Yes.
And it's not the same shit that they put in the Reese's Pieces is this like different kind of peanut butter that I think tastes like garbage.
It's super compacted. The thing, Reese's Pieces just don't melt. That's the advantage. You can eat that in that dry desert heat that E.T. is in, and you're not.
When you're in that dry desert heat, and the only thing that you want at that moment, when it's like 110 in the shade, is a nice mouthful of Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, you don't want to be just having a puddle of chocolate goo dripping through your fingers as you're trying to wash it down with a glass of milk or something. But the hell was I talking about? I think that the fact that it's a kids movie, I don't have a problem with that. But I think that it's on a I sound like super haughty, but it's on like the intellectual level of a kids movie, which is something that doesn't really hold my attention in a lot of ways. And I think that it's like I actually don't think I didn't think the movie dragged or anything. I think it's much better than Hook in that sense.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that I don't know. I feel like there's an emotional thing. Like Amy, my wife, really liked this movie, and I could tell she was getting upset with me after we had watched it that I didn't like it as much as her. And I don't know if it's one of those movies where it's the nostalgia of it seems to drive a lot of things. Although everyone who's been writing in says that they also don't like E.T. So who the hell was liking E.T.?
I don't know. Michael Jackson, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I would watch Hook again before I would watch E.T. again.
That's a tall ask, I think, for me. Yeah.
Well, no, I would watch parts of E.T. maybe for like storytelling or filmmaking reasons. Most of it does not involve the character of E.T. Now I'm thinking about it, but like if I had to throw on one of them, I would throw on Hook 9 times out of 10, just because Dustin Hoffman alone. The Hook will bring me back. So John Popper once said. It's just like when I think about the two movies, I think about there's more stuff that I can think about in Hook being like, oh yeah, that's pretty fun. I would watch that again than E.T.
What's your favorite E.T. scene?
I like I said, I like the scene where he gets drunk. But like just as a straight up movie scene, probably the one where they talk about the dad. I think that scene's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. D. Wallace is really good at playing a frazzled mother.
Yes. Yeah. All the actors in this are pretty good. The kids are all
they're great.
The kids are all good. I don't know if I really have a favorite scene. I think that it's I really like the when Elliot sort of camps out for the night in his lawn chair and he finds E.T. There, he sort of comes out of the little shed and he gives him back his Reese's Pieces. I think that's good on a level just because it balanced the sort of terror of what E.T. potentially could be with the the sort of childish nature of him, where he's brought all his candy back for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a lot of light stuff that I think is pretty good. But
I will say, when it started, I was thinking that this was not the best use of John Williams, but by the end of it, I had really turned around on that, because I think what they do in this is they really they use John Williams to his most sharply focused effect, where instead of right from the beginning hitting you with the bombastic theme and then like, so every time E.T. shows up, you get the E.T. theme. He plays it pretty reserved for most of the movie. Yep. And then as they start pushing closer to the end, you start getting a little bits and pieces of that E.T. theme. Because when it started, I couldn't even remember what the E.T. theme was. I thought that there was, in my head, I was like, oh, maybe they don't have one. Did they write one for this? But then by the end, when you've got him flying in the bike and everything, and he's just like, the whole orchestra's hitting it, it was like, oh yeah, that's a perfect use. Because he's a great composer just for regular stuff, but when you need him to turn into overdrive, he's gonna nail it. And they hold it back. That, like, the music in E.T. is like the shark in Jaws, basically, where they don't give you a lot of it, but then at the end they give you all of it, and it works very, very well.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I think that I think the music is essential to selling the ending of the movie.
Yeah.
But I think that the music in E.T. is actually probably one of the most important music aspects of the Williams films. Like Jurassic Park is probably more memorable, and I can sing the songs from Jurassic Park more, but I feel like what's happening in those scenes can carry it a little bit more than the E.T. scenes do, and you really need that sort of orchestral swelling dramatic music at the end to really sell E.T. going back home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think it does a really good job of that, and it's the same. It builds through the movie, which is something I noticed, and so it's almost overwhelming at the very end, and it ties into, as opposed to Hook, this is much more of a filmmaker's film in that the opening probably 10 or 15 minutes has no dialogue to it, and the last probably 10 to 15 minutes has very little dialogue that means anything as well.
Right.
It's a very visual movie.
Yeah, they do a great job right from the get-go. I think my favorite part of this movie is the scientist guys, because the way that they handle them through it is really, really good. Like the way that they drive home almost incessantly the key thing at the beginning. Yeah. I spent most of the movie not being able to remember if that was a digital edit that he did in 2002. If you know how in Spielberg re-released this in 2002 with like a bunch of digital edits, and I wasn't sure which version HBO had. I watched it on HBO. HBO has the original version, which is good to know. But I spent the whole time wondering, are they supposed to have guns on their belt in the original? But no, they're just keys, I guess. No, the gun change comes at the end when they
with the cops, with the shotguns.
Yeah. That's quite. If the keys were supposed to be guns, that's a pretty heavy change that he would have made, because the keys are essential to figuring out, like, remembering those characters, because they drive it home so hard at the beginning, and then you don't see those guys for the next like hour and a half. Yeah. But the minute that you see them again, once you see the key thing, it works instantly. So they drive it home almost too much, so they can not do anything with it for a long time and have it still work when they bring it back. And that stuff was great. I was kind of hoping that the guy with the key ring was going to be someone I recognized instead of just like, off-brand Eric Roberts. Sure. Unless he was an actor from the time that was famous or something. But I feel like that kind of reveal you would put like, Albert Finney in the suit or something like that.
I feel you're actually that's that NASA scientist character the entire time?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you know that from the keys?
Because towards the end, after they quarantine the house, they show him suiting up in the quarantine suit, and he's got the keys on his belt.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. See, that makes that character a little bit better for me. He doesn't totally rescue me because I think that character is the stupidest character in the entire movie.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much of a point to him.
No,
ultimately.
and he's purely a good guy. He's purely like I was young and I believed in aliens, and now we need to send this alien home.
Yeah, I think the last half an hour of the movie, while it works really well emotionally, I think the plot completely falls apart for the most part. Not completely falls apart, but it just doesn't hold together like the way that they built it up. Because yeah, when those guys come back, they've been selling them as malevolent the entire movie, and then you finally get to see this guy, and he's like, no, I care about him too. I don't want him to die. I like fun friends.
I remember I remember the government of this movie being much more malevolent than they actually are.
Yeah, and then they swing back though, because like he comes off as a nice guy, but then once they escape with him, they're like pulling out guns on everybody and stuff. And I mean, I can maybe understand that's why he wanted to change the guns at the end, but even still, it's like, why the chase at the end seems a little weird if the government forces are not negative actors.
It's very cartoony. It's like government agents running behind the bikes, like they just can't catch the kids on the bikes as they're running through. It is weird that
one of those kids needed to get shot.
Well, I was thinking like the cops left such an opening between the cruisers. I was that's like a perfect. It's the 300 will trap the enemy in the narrow cliff walls, and they only did that so they can line them up.
300. Yeah,
they only did that so they could just mow them down with shotguns. And I'm sure someone has done a sketch or something where it is the movie redone, except the kids all get lit up at the end by the cops. But
it's just it's the kids on the bike, and then it's a hard cut to the end of Bonnie and Clyde.
It's just the bike upside down on the ground, spinning, the wheels spinning in the breeze.
Yep.
As I said, Spielberg redid the movie in 2002, made some changes. He edited out the shotguns and he put walkie-talkies in the people's hands. In 2011, he said that there's going to be no more digital enhancements or digital additions to anything I direct. When people ask me which ET they should look at, I always tell them to look at the original 1982 ET.
Didn't he go back and change it back, though?
In the edition that comes out now, you get both versions on the DVD.
Oh, I thought he straight up went back and was like, no, I'm not going to do this, and just took everything back and just put the original back.
Oh, I don't know. I was reading that.
I could be wrong, but
it was released. Oh, yeah. I mean, they released it as the double. They released it with the changes, and then they pulled, or maybe not pulled, but they re-released the DVD as the original version afterwards. So maybe they just don't sell it anymore, which might be the way that it was. But I remember seeing that you could get both versions. It's a weird one. I almost feel like it's Lucas getting too much of an influence on his friend Steven Spielberg on some level. I didn't remember that, but the ETs are actually in the Phantom Menace. Is that right?
Yep. They are in the Galactic Senate. Yeah.
Oh, that's that's right. Yeah, I feel like that's just maybe Steven Spielberg being a little bit too meek with George Lucas, like kicks down his office door and is telling him about all these digital additions he's doing to his movies and stuff like that.
When did you say he did that? Was it 2001?
2002 was when ET was re-edited or
so that's 97. 99. That's right around the time they were probably shooting Revenge of the Sith, right?
Yep.
And there is a rumor that Steven Spielberg actually directed bits and pieces of the lightsaber fight at the end in the volcano.
Okay.
So he was probably, neck deep in Lucas territory at the time when he was making those decisions. So I would chalk that up to like the filmmaking equivalent of getting like shit-faced with your friend and doing something you regret.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about having John Williams on this movie is that scene where E.T. has the stare down with Yoda. He throws in just a little flourish of the Yoda music from Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, does he really? Nice.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a It's cute or whatever on that level. I don't have any issues with that or anything. But
that's a good description for the entire movie. It's cute or whatever on that level. But
yeah, I don't know. I've been trying. I watched this 2 nights ago. I've been trying to come up with how I feel about the movie, and I don't think I've been able to. And I don't know why. I feel like I should have a better reason for not being particularly enthralled by it.
He's got DNA.
Incredible.
He's got DNA.
Wow.
He doesn't have 4 nucleotides like we do. He has 6.
I've got desynchronization of the 2 brainwave activities. What are they?
One is innocent and there's a pyrimidine we can't identify.
The boy's condition is stabilizing. His blood pressure is coming back up.
216 codons compared to
E.T. Elliot.
Speaking. He's talking.
E.T. Stay with me. Please stay together. I'll be right here. I'll be right here. Stay, Elliot.
Did you notice that? So I was wondering if this movie had some influence on Stephen King when he was writing It, because there's some stuff in this movie that, specifically the idea of this alien from another planet who is like an ambassador for good, who apparently, and they don't really follow this up or explore this, but apparently adults can't see, because the first half of the movie they have it so adults literally can't see him. And Drew Barrymore actually says it out loud. And then for whatever reason, they don't do that anymore. And then later on when he's sick, everybody can see him. So I don't know if it was supposed to be literally adults can't see him, or if it was supposed to be like metaphorically adults can't see him. But I was thinking that's sort of like, that concept is sort of like the polar opposite of the It concept, which is the adults in this town can't see this alien malevolent force that's infecting the kids.
Yep.
So I could see Stephen King taking that and then, perverting it. But what do you think? Did you catch that stuff about the adults not being able to see him?
No. Well, I caught the Drew Barrymore thing, but the only scene where I wondered about it was the one where I thought they were just playing it for comic effect, where he's walking around in the kitchen and the mother's putting away groceries. Yeah,
there's that scene. There's also the scene where she looks into the closet. And I mean, they play it also for laughs that he's in there among the stuffed animals.
Yeah.
But then the first time when they go out to when they're all playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he goes out and he yells for everybody to come out and see what's in the shed. She goes in and looks in the shed and says there's nothing in there, and then afterwards he comes walking out. So I don't know, was the implication that he was in there, she just couldn't see him?
That's interesting. I never thought about that, because I guess the only thing it goes in conflict with is that at the beginning they are tracking the aliens.
Right, but they don't really ever see the aliens.
They don't see. Yes, that's true.
I would be interested if anybody could give us a straight read on that, because I mean, it might have just been an idea that they kind of played with and then kind of discarded after a while, because it's not really a big part of the movie. But
no, yeah, and then I'm trying to think of the event is that he gets sick, right, and then that triggers it back the other way. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, but people should let us know if that's something that you actually read, and if you saw that in the movie and you thought it was something that was actually supposed to be like an intentional sort of decision they were making. It'd be interesting. So let's talk about the worst part of the movie. I'll just go first here. I think is the ET's sickness feels totally like, as we were saying about Discovery, notes on a board. We just need to get him to this point.
Yep.
And they do it, and you feel bad for him when he's sick and when he's dying. But then it all just kind of caps off in the very cliche, he's dead. No, wait, he's alive. He's okay. He's going to be fine. Let's get him out of here and bring him back to his ship.
I have to say, one of my least favorite things that people do in stories, for some reason it's primarily sci-fi stories, they do it a lot on Doctor Who, and it really annoys me every time, is when people are saved by just the concept of love.
Yeah.
And it really bugs me. And this was a big one where it's like, not only was it fucking dark, where he's standing over E.T.'s corpse in a body bag in a freezer.
Yep.
Who he's clearly just dead. But then he's like, is he brought back by Elliot's love, or is he brought back because his family's coming, so his heart light starts glowing? Assuming it's the love part, it's just he's dead and very clearly dead, and then he's like, E.T., I love you, and then he comes back.
Well,
he's totally fine.
Even before that, did E.T. break the connection between him and Elliot, and that is what killed him?
I don't remember.
Because Elliot gets better at that point, So my understanding is that E.T. broke whatever connection was between them.
Mm-hmm.
Elliot improves, but that still doesn't explain why E.T. is alive. And if I'm going by what the dialogue says, it seems to be just the fact that other aliens are coming to get him, and that revives him.
I guess. And I mean, he goes from, like, again, dead, he is a corpse, to, like, totally fine.
Yes.
in about a second and a half.
Being very happy. It's the happiest E.T. is in the whole movie, because E.T. he keeps saying E.T. phone home, E.T. phone home.
Yeah.
That's the only... It's weird, because the movie, that's the sort of the turning point of the movie. It happens very quickly, and I feel it's handled pretty clunkily. Even down to the government is like the most inept government in the world, where Elliot can just walk down the tube into the van that E.T. is in and drive off with him.
Yep.
It's a kid's movie, so I don't really care about that. But that middle section always sticks out to me as the most problematic point of the entire thing.
Yeah, it does feel like a we don't know how to end this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because you have to, obviously E.T. has to get back to his family, and it has to be dramatic and spectacular, but like it really is the only conflict in the movie, right? Aside from
hiding E.T.
E.T.
Yeah.
Which on some level you don't even necessarily need to do.
No, because it goes well every single time he's revealed to people.
Yeah. And again, if adults can't see him, then who cares?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the only real conflict in the movie is figuring out how to get him home. Well, aside from the part where he gets sick, figuring out how to get him home is the only conflict in the movie. But then the only other conflict in the movie is the fact that he's sick and that these guys are coming. That everything that happens at the end feels kind of tacked on a little bit.
Is E.T. slowly dying the entire movie, or does he get pneumonia from staying out at night trying to phone home?
I don't know. No, I do know. He is slowly dying, I think.
Okay.
Because they link his energy bar basically to that potted flower plant.
Oh, okay.
And so every now and then they cut back to it and it starts to like wilt and stuff. Unless the only time they do that is right before they find him out in the serial killer, like he's been dumped off the side of a road like by a serial killer.
What? Yeah. Why was E.T. down by the river like that?
I don't know. I don't know why he got up and left.
Why he didn't stay with his phone machine?
Yeah. Like don't go jogging at night if you're a human or an ET, I guess, because you're gonna get serial killed.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't have any problems with the movie outside of that. Really, it's just an odd little movie that I think I'm looking forward to seeing what people say about it. Just because I don't know where people would actually stand on it. Maybe people seem more similar to us. I will say, just our last bit of going out, there was a canceled sequel to it. It was going to be called.
Oh boy.
It was going to be called ET2 Nocturnal Fears. It
What?
would have shown Elliot and his friends getting kidnapped by evil aliens and follow their attempts to contact ET for help.
Jesus.
Steven Spielberg and Matheson wrote a treatment for it.
Talk about missing the point.
Some evil aliens. And ET is also known for being one of the worst video games of all time. It came out in the Atari 2600.
Very famously.
Yeah, very famously. It's a terrible movie where you try to avoid E.T. falling into pits, I guess, and you stretch his neck out and try to fly out of them or something.
Did you ever see that documentary that they made about it?
About that game? No.
Yeah, well, it's about the Atari system as a whole and the downfall of it, but
Yep.
it does focus very heavily on that game because the driving thing is that you know the myth that there's a landfill somewhere that's filled completely with unsold
Those
copies
games.
of that game. Yeah, so
Yeah.
the guy's trying to find that landfill, and that's sort of the framing device for telling the story of the Atari company.
Huh,
And when they
interesting.
finally get, it's a good watch. When they finally get to the ET game, it's actually really interesting because it's like basically Atari was bulletproof at this point. Like everything they were making was good and was selling. And there's this one guy in particular who was making all these great games, and he basically says like, yeah, you know, I thought I could do anything. And so they came to me with this ET thing, and I had like 5 days to turn it around.
Yeah.
And so he crafted this game that when you hear him talk about it, it sounds like a pretty good game. He talks about it as though it was kind of misunderstood in that it was for as a game, it's not bad, but as an ET game, it's terrible, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And then, you know, of course he's like, and you know, Steven Spielberg had to sign off on it. So really, he's the one that made this happen. And this guy went from being like the most successful game developer at Atari to being fired after ET in like a year, like half a year, some very short period of time. He got kicked to the road pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Atari 2600. Like how the games aren't all that different from each other. You know, they're just like
Right.
pixel stuff on the screen. So it's I've never played it. I've seen ET played, I think. I don't know. It's, you know, it just feels like the gulf between a great Atari game and a terrible Atari game is much more narrow than it would be today, where if a game came out that was so bad, but I'd be interested to see. I'll have to get a Let's Play of me playing ET on the channel. Let's see here. Do we have anything else we want to talk about? I feel like I don't think we gave it short shrift or anything, but it's been an interesting. Spielberg's been the weirdest like topic for this podcast so far to me. Both of the movies are very similar to each other, but very different, and neither of them were very interesting to me.
Yeah. It's this whole experiment has been fairly interesting, seeing the highs and lows of different people, especially from the filmmaker. Well, I guess all around, because the Patrick Stewart one I feel like was a little bit of a non-starter, just because his two movies were kind of he doesn't really have a lot of starring roles.
No, he's a second role, so his movies aren't really focused on him.
What was the other one? It was the Christmas one, and what was the other one?
Logan, that's
right. Yeah. That one notwithstanding, the other three that we've done so far have been pretty interesting in terms of looking at the highest and lowest, because Ridley Scott, I think, probably is the only one that has two polar
different
opposite
movies.
kind of movies,
Yeah.
whereas Tom Cruise, very, very similar, Steven Spielberg, very, very similar.
Yeah.
And it's basically, if you really think about it, Cruise and Spielberg have a bad and good version of the same movie, essentially.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
wonder how
interesting.
frequent that'll happen, where it's like maybe I don't know if it's not the case for well, maybe Spielberg is. It's trying to like recapture that magic that you had before, and you just come out with a terrible version of it. Because Cruise is the other way, right? Risky Business came out. No, it's the same for Cruise. Risky Business came out first, and then Cocktail came out second.
Yep.
Huh. I wonder if that'll be a theme that we've got going on here.
And, Patrick Stewart was just trying to recapture the magic of Christmas Eve and ended up with Logan, I guess.
Patrick Stewart might be the weirdest one. That kicked us off from the Star Trek stuff, but it'll be more different going forward. But I guess that's we'll wrap it up here, and we could talk about how the show will change. So we've decided to do what we'll call the B-roll episode, where we will take a movie that we decide to do from the topic that we're talking about. So for this month, we'll be doing a Steven Spielberg movie. And I think, have we settled on that, Clay? I think we've settled on it, right?
Well, we didn't want to go too far back and, kind of catch up quickly. So I was thinking the idea behind it is to do lesser known great movies by the people that we're covering, because there's the best and there's the worst, but there's always the stuff somewhere in the middle that people kind of forget about. There are usually movies that I really would like to talk about.
Yeah, and I see it as also maybe I was even thinking of maybe it's a famous movie, but it's not captured by the high and the low of that director.
Yeah,
you know,
that can work too.
You know what I mean?
And to kind of catch up quickly, I was thinking we could do Minority Report, because Minority Report is a Spielberg movie. It has Tom Cruise in it, and it's a fairly overlooked Spielberg movie, I think. And it's I
never think of it as a Spielberg movie, which is interesting.
From what I remember, it's pretty good, and it's it's over 10 years old now, I think, right? Or is it about 10 years old?
I think so. I can look it up actually.
I think it's a little over 10 years old, and I think it has a very Spielberg
2002.
Oh yeah, okay. Spielberg didn't do a lot, or hasn't done a lot, of straight up futurist sci-fi stuff. The only other one that I can think of off the top of my head, and correct me if I'm missing one, is AI, and that one even doesn't really count because that's sort of like that's the Kubrick one.
Yep.
And I think looking back at Minority Report will be interesting because there's a lot of stuff in there that has more or less come true.
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Maybe not replacing eyeballs to avoid advertising or location or whatever, but there's a lot of stuff in there that it was kind of on the mark. And and as his only real straight up, hard sci-fi movie in the classic sense of the sci-fi movie, I think it'll be interesting to look at.
War of the Worlds would be the only exception.
Oh yeah, that's true. Also Tom Cruise, so I guess we could do that one as well. But I don't want to do that one because I don't like that movie.
Minority Report, I prefer to War of the Worlds. I think. So that'll be the thing. We'll
even
do that
though, even War of the Worlds isn't really is not the same kind of sci-fi movie. It's more like Jurassic Park sci-fi, because it's basically modern times, but there's a sci-fi element. Whereas Minority Report is straight up like speculative fiction.
Right, because it's War of the Worlds is sci-fi from like 1930. Right, yes. So it's you've kind of passed it in a sense, and it seems more fantasy almost at that point.
Right.
So that'll be the thing. We'll do it after we do the high and the low, or the low and the high, whatever order we're in, and then we'll do the B-roll episode, which will just come out on the feed, and everything is normal. And that'll be it. It'll be a good way to sort of capture the stuff that maybe falls through the cracks a little bit, and it'll give us maybe a tiebreaker or something, or something in the Spielberg sense where neither of those movies really impressed us, so maybe there'll be something else that we can talk about from another movie. I think that's it. So you guys can check out all the social media links. They'll be in the podcast description and the video description. You go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show there. You get extra podcasts, and you get to vote on what the topics are that we're going to talk about. And then I think that's pretty much it. What do? We want to wrap up? Do we have a non sequitur? I don't know if I have one off the top of my head, or if you had anything you wanted to talk about before we say goodbye.
Not really. I plugged it on Deep Space Nine, but I have a new book coming out on Friday from Waxwork Comics called Poser. And each issue comes with a 7-inch vinyl album of original music written for the book as like a soundtrack. It's like a horror thing, going for like a 70s Italian horror kind of vibe. So if that's your thing, it comes out March 9th, and you can get it at waxworkcomics.com.
And John Williams was the composer on the LP for that one, right?
Yeah, I wish. Not to say that the music is bad, because it's very cool and it goes with the book, but that would be a get, as they would say.
Is it atmospheric music with the book, or is it like sort of radio songs?
No, it's atmospheric kind of. It's like a soundtrack, because Waxwork they specialize in doing LP vinyl pressings of old horror movie soundtracks. So with their comics, they wanted to continue their their bread and butter, so to speak, and so they've written and recorded soundtrack music for, I guess that's the best way to describe it. So it's like the music for Poser is kind of like punk music meets John Carpenter. So it's like there's a lot of fast guitars, but then it kind of segues into some like moody synthesizer stuff. It's really cool.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you guys can check that out. Do I have a non sequitur? I don't know if I do. I should always pre-plan these things, I suppose. We talked about the Oscars. And the last one, no, I don't think so. I think we'll just call it a day. I won't hem and haw here anymore. So, E.T., we've done it. We've watched it. It's on HBO if you guys want to catch up with it. Otherwise, I know some people bought the DVD, the 4K DVD. I don't know if that brings a new appreciation of the film or anything like that.
Go listen to Turn On Your Heart Light by Neil Diamond. It's a lovely song.
That's right. And then go watch the Will Ferrell Neil Diamond sketch on SNL, which is always one of my favorites. That's it. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening. We will see you next time. We'll come out with the B-roll, which will be Minority Reports, and then we'll announce who the next person that we're going to be covering is. So until then, have a good one.